You were always available, answering texts within seconds, saying yes, when your body screamed no, showing up. Even when no one showed up for you, you thought being too available made you likable, made you needed, made you worthy. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He said the soul doesn't grow through constant availability, it grows through withdrawal. And when you finally stop being too available to everything and everyone, the world doesn't fall apart. It rearranges, the users fall away, the real you steps forward, and for the first time you become undeniable. You thought being too available made you good. You were always there, always reachable, always on standby, just in case someone might need you. Texts at 2 a.m., phone calls during dinner plans. You didn't want to join, you were the reliable one, the constant one, the friend who always picked up, the partner who never said no, and people praised you for it, called you selfless, loyal, dependable. But inside you were breaking, you were always drained, emotionally, flatlined, losing sleep, losing energy, losing yourself. And still you showed up. Why? Because deep down you believed excessive availability was the same as love, that if you were just present enough, helpful enough, convenient enough, they'd never abandon you. But Carl Jung knew better. He didn't see constant availability as kindness. He saw it as self-betrayal, disguised as virtue, because being always available isn't love. It's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being wanted. You didn't offer your presence freely, you offered it as payment, hoping someone would finally see your worth, hoping your accessibility would translate to being valued. But the truth is, you trained people to expect your constant presence, to take, without asking, to demand without gratitude, because that's what you allowed, and slowly your availability became your prison. You didn't know how to rest, didn't know how to say, I'm not available right now, didn't know how to exist without guilt. You lived for others and forgot how to live for yourself. But something shifted, didn't it? A moment came, silent but seismic, when you realized no one was checking if you were okay. No one noticed your exhaustion. No one saw your breaking point. Because when you give everything, people forget you need anything. And in that moment you saw the truth. Your excessive availability had nothing to do with love, and everything to do with fear. So here's the question you've been avoiding for years: what happens when you finally stop being too available to the wrong people, the wrong patterns, the wrong version of yourself? The answer: everything changes. Not immediately, but profoundly, in ways that look like loss, but feel like awakening. Because when you stop being too available, the takers vanish, the noise quiets, the illusions dissolve, and something sacred happens. Your energy starts coming home. You remember who you were before they taught you that your value was in your constant presence, before you believed that being accessible was safer than being authentic. You feel it, that quiet power of not responding, not chasing, not explaining. You become a boundary, and boundaries make users uncomfortable. They'll say you've changed, say you've become cold, say you've become selfish. But the truth is, you've become self-respecting, and people who only loved your availability will always resent your boundaries. Jung would call this individuation, the moment your soul stops seeking external validation and starts choosing authenticity over performance. And yes, it will cost you the superficial connections, the relationships built on convenience, the illusion that being good meant being depleted. But what you gain yourself, the version of you who says, I don't answer immediately anymore. And that's okay. I'm not available just because you suddenly need me. I deserve peace, not perpetual access. You stop being on call for other people's emergencies and start being present for your own healing. That's not selfish, that's sacred. And for the first time you'll understand that excessive availability is not generosity, presence without boundaries, is not kindness and disappearing into others, is not the path to being valued. It's the path to being exploited, drained, forgotten, but not anymore, because the day you stop being too available is the day everything starts becoming clear. The first time you don't reply immediately, you feel it, the shift, the unease, the expectation. You see the message, read. Then they wait, then they message again, they start typing anxiously, then delete the message. They become distant, then suddenly reappear with urgency. Why? Because your unavailability has power, and they can sense it. Not because you were manipulative, not because you were cruel, but because for the first time you didn't appear on command, and that threatens their convenience. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And your withdrawal forces them to face it. See, you were the emotional crutch, the distraction, the one who made everything easier, the constant presence, the reliable response. They didn't value your time. They valued how your excessive availability served their needs. And now that you've established boundaries, the imbalance has no hiding place. So they react, they pressure, they say you're different now. But what they really mean is, you stopped being the version of yourself I could access any time. And that's threatening, because now they have to confront what your constant presence helped them avoid: their own emptiness, their own selfishness, their own responsibility. Because the moment you stop being too available, you reveal how one-sided many relationships truly were. And for the people who only knew how to take, that's devastating, because they never learned how to respect boundaries, only how to exploit openness without guilt. You didn't set limits before because you were afraid of losing people. But now you realize people who leave when you start honoring yourself were never truly with you. They were with your availability, your convenience, your doormat tendencies, and your constant presence was currency. They used to buy comfort, but now your presence means connection with yourself, and they resist it because you're no longer easy to exploit. And in this world, easy access is control. They feel it slipping, and they'll do anything to pull you back. Not out of care, but out of habit. And here's the truth that liberates people: don't miss you when you withdraw. They miss what you did for them. And when they realize you're not going back to excessive availability, they either grow or they go. This is where clarity emerges. When you finally reclaim your time and energy, you see who adjusts and who disappears. The ones who valued the real you will respect your new boundaries, meet you in your authenticity, honor your limits, but the others, they'll guilt you for changing, call you distant, difficult. But you're not difficult. You're done performing. You're done being endlessly available to people who only noticed you when they wanted something. And now you've become discerning, and discernment doesn't please people, it confronts them. And in that confrontation you finally see the truth. You weren't cherished, you were consumed conveniently. And now that the unlimited access is gone, so are they, but let them go. Because your worth isn't measured by your availability. It's revealed in your boundaries, and the right people, they won't punish you. They won't guilt you. They won't disappear. They'll understand, they'll adapt. They'll match your healthy limits, because you're no longer accessible to exploitation. You're available to yourself, and that is the most powerful transformation of all. Let's be honest. You thought excessive availability would protect you, that if you were responsive enough, accessible enough, present enough, you'd never be abandoned, never forgotten, never replaced. So you made yourself perpetually reachable, always to your friends, to your partners, to people who didn't even deserve access to your inner world. And it seemed to work at first. You were needed, valued, appreciated, but not for who you truly are, only for what you provided. And slowly you stopped providing anything to yourself. You postponed your dreams, dimmed your truth, held space for everyone else's needs, while yours silently accumulated in the background. You didn't recognize it at first, the heaviness, the depletion, the slow internal destruction of giving without reciprocity. But eventually you felt it. You started losing your voice, not because someone stole it, because you surrendered it. You started questioning your worth, when no one reached out unless they needed something. You started wondering, would anyone still care if I stopped being so available? And that fear kept you accessible even when you were collapsing inside. Carl Jung called this the shadow of the people pleaser, the unconscious belief that constant availability is the only path to connection. But connection without mutual respect isn't relationship, it's dependency. And the longer you stayed excessively available, the more you depleted your essence. You were admired for your reliability, while privately resenting everyone who exploited it. You were called selfless, because no one noticed you had completely lost yourself. That's the true cost. It wasn't just energy, it was identity, authenticity, joy. You were there for everyone except you. And when you finally needed support, they were unavailable. unresponsive, absent, and suddenly you realized you were never truly seen, only used because you taught them that your presence required no reciprocity, no boundaries, no respect, but secretly, you always hoped someone would notice your silent suffering, that someone would ask, "Are you drowning in your own availability?" and stay when you finally said yes. But they didn't, and that hurt in a way words can't capture. Like being invisible while being constantly needed by people who claimed, "I care about you." You weren't demanding, you were just disappearing in plain sight, and you remained that way, because setting boundaries meant risking rejection, so you remained excessively available, and you called that loyalty. But now you see your excessive availability drained your authenticity. You became a reflection of what others expected, not a reflection of your own truth. And the most disturbing part, you started believing that was normal. That exhaustion was just the cost of being loved. That anxiety was just the price of being needed. That emptiness was the natural result of being valued. But Jung recognized that deception. He knew that people who are perpetually available eventually become emotionally bankrupt, because giving without limits isn't generosity, it's self-destruction. It's the soul eroding silently, while everyone praises your sacrifice. But you're done sacrificing now, because finally you understand the cost. And now you're ready to reclaim your essence, your time, your energy, your voice, your no. And from here everything transforms. It starts with distance, not as punishment, but as protection. A reset. You stop answering immediately. Stop explaining your boundaries to people determined to misunderstand you. Stop offering unlimited access to those who refuse to respect your limits. And for the first time you feel freedom, not because your circumstances improved, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours to carry. You feared becoming less available would make you isolated, but instead it makes you powerful, because now your presence is no longer guaranteed. It's earned. You're no longer anyone's emotional convenience store. You're not constantly available, not perpetually accessible, not in service to everyone's demands. Carl Jung called this the path to wholeness. The moment when you step out of the role of the always available one and into the truth of your own needs. You no longer chase approval, you attract respect, not by pretending, but by becoming uncompromisingly genuine. Your yes becomes meaningful, now because you've reclaimed your right to say no. You begin protecting your time, like your well-being depends on it, because it does. No more abandoning yourself to avoid conflict. No more draining your energy in one-sided exchanges. No more endless conversations that leave you resentful, but empty. You become selective, not closed to connection, but to exploitation. Selective about who deserves your presence. Selective about which emergencies are truly yours to solve. Selective about what obligations are real versus imposed. You stop showing up out of habit and start showing up with intention. At first it feels uncomfortable, because you were addicted to being needed. But what you're actually doing is healing from the addiction to external validation. You don't disappear, you reappear as your authentic self. You wake up centered, move intentionally. Choose where to direct your energy based on mutual respect, not obligation, and suddenly you feel empowered. Not because you control others, but because you've finally taken control of your boundaries. You don't respond to every demand, and the right people understand your reasons. You don't justify your limits, because people who deserve your time don't demand your constant performance. You become unpredictable to people who only valued the version of you they could access on demand, and that's how you know it's working. Because when you're finally unavailable to the wrong things, you become genuinely available to your truth. You begin hearing your own voice again, feeling your own needs again, trusting your own wisdom. Again, you stop living at everyone's beck and call, and start living on purpose. Jung believed the authentic self emerges when we stop being defined by others' expectations. And now you experience it. You were never the strong one. You were the always available one, the endlessly accessible one, the one who never said not now. But now you've reclaimed the power of being discerning. And that isn't cruelty, it's essential growth, because you don't owe anyone unlimited access to the person you've worked so hard to become. It hits you gradually, not like lightning, but like daybreak after years of darkness. You were never too much, you were just always there, always attentive, always accommodating, always easy to reach. They didn't value you less. They just never learned how to value someone who didn't make themselves endlessly available. You sacrificed for everyone except yourself. You gave energy, like it was infinite, and they consumed it like it was their right. And now that you've stopped, now that you've created space-drawn firm boundaries, become intentional with your presence, they claim you've abandoned them. But what they mean is you stopped abandoning yourself at their convenience. Carl Jung understood this when he said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and your excessive availability was just another way to avoid accepting your own worth, your own needs, your own right to exist, without constant service to others. You believed you had to earn love through constant accessibility, through immediate response, through remaining available longer than was healthy, through being compliant when you needed to speak up. But the revelation you were never hard to love, you were just too easy to exploit, too forgiving, too accessible, too open to people who had never earned that privilege. And now you're not resentful. You're just awake. Awake to the exploitation disguised as connection. Awake to the depletion masked as dedication. Awake to the self-erasure, packaged as selflessness. Now you understand something profound. Love without boundaries becomes enmeshment. Loyalty without limits becomes martyrdom. Availability without discernment becomes self-betrayal. So you establish limits, you stop answering calls during your rest. Time, you stop saying yes when your intuition whispers no. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your energy. And what happens? Your life contracts, but it becomes authentic. The drain disappears, but peace arrives. You lose quantity, but find quality, and in the silence of your reclaimed boundaries, you realize you weren't born to be constantly available to everyone. You were born to become fully available to yourself. That's the transformation, the final awakening. You are no longer measured by your responsiveness, but by your self-respect. No longer by the texts you answer, but by the truth you honor. No longer by how accessible you make yourself, but by how authentically you live. Because now you're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You're no longer terrified of being alone. You're no longer desperate to be needed. You are selective about who receives your energy. And that's not selfishness, that's wisdom. You've stopped being excessively available to the wrong connections, to make space for the right ones. And from this place everything transforms. Not because others change, because you do. And the people who truly matter will join you here, where your presence is sacred and your energy is no longer taken for granted. If you stopped being too available to everyone, what would finally have space to grow in your life? Have you been giving your constant presence to people who never reciprocated? If you've ever felt completely drained just by being too available for too long, comment, I'm reclaiming my boundaries, my energy is sacred, and my presence must be earned.